I like our guys. We just got our last freshman here, Kamaka Hepa, because he was with the 18 under national team. They won a gold medal on Saturday. So he hasn't started working out yet. He's got to get cleared from his physical. But the guys that we've had here have been really good in workouts. The freshmen are clearly have a lot to learn, and they are very, very eager. I think it's a good group from the standpoint of attitude and approach. They have a lot to learn, but it's been fun so far working with them. And then our older guys, our returning guys, have really hit the ground running in the weight room, on the court. We've spent a lot of time on skill development, and they've been really good with that.
What's been your impression of Coleman and Roach is in terms of like their shooting so far that you've been able to see?
They've shot the ball well in our workouts. We've not done a ton of live play in practice just because the NCAA increased the amount of hours that we can use from 2 to 4 in the summertime and in the off season. And so we want to make sure that we dedicate a lot of that extra time on skill development, and we don't want these guys to feel like we're practicing year-round. At the same time, we're getting a chance to implement some things in terms of what we want to do offensively, defensively. Coleman and Roach have been really good. Snoop's taken another step with his shooting, which has been impressive, and Matt's done a really good job as a leader. And so we just want to keep those guys developing. I told those guys, you know, it's been a while since Texas has had a backcourt that people would consider, you know, one of the elite backcourts in the Big 12. And I said this is a year where if we do our jobs, that can be a reality. So that's what we're working towards.
Do you expect Snoop to be, I mean, I know you expect him to be one of your top scorers. Do you expect him to be a leading scorer at the game? Someone you want to put that much responsibility on?
I think, Brian, if he shoots the ball the way he did near the tail end of the season last year, then he'll certainly be up there, if not the leading scorer, because Snoop's a guy that can create points in a lot of ways in transition, driving the basketball, coming off a pick and roll. And if you add making 3, 4, 5 threes in a game to that, like he did in multiple games down the stretch, then you know he's going to put a lot of points on the board. But I don't necessarily know if this is going to be a team where we have one guy that's head and shoulders above everyone else in terms of scoring, and that's okay. I mean, you want to have a lot of different threats out there offensively and guys that can work together.
What kind of shape is Dylan in at this point, and is his conditioning kind of a point of emphasis for you guys?
Yeah, it's a huge point of emphasis. He's in really good shape. He's worked his butt off since really April when we got back going after the season. He's dropped about 20 pounds, and he looks really good. He's moving well. So the key, obviously, is continuing to get in better and better shape and stay in that kind of shape during the course of the season. And as I've always tried to communicate to him, I think it's a combination of mind, body, you know, everything together. But his work ethic's been terrific. The way that he's been disciplined with what with his diet and the way he's treated his body has been really good. I've just tried to encourage Mo to keep up the great work. His work ethic has been phenomenal in this pre-draft process. You know, when guys get here as freshmen, you know they're going to have to take a jump in terms of the way they approach working. And Mo did that, and he really, I think, stepped up a notch or two in terms of his seriousness about the game and the way that he looked at his game as really something to study and something to grow on every day. He got better and better over the course of this past season, but since the time where he left Texas and went to full-time working on his body, he's taken it to another level, and it's been really impressive. So I've just encouraged him to keep that up and you know, enjoy this process that he's part of right now that will end in a couple days, but then it starts a new process.
Someone's been
Yeah.
He's getting out there. Is that? I mean, he's pretty. He talked a lot here, but it seems like.
Yeah, you know, to some extent, that's the name of the game for all those guys, is exposure, because you know now it becomes more than just about what you're doing on the court. There's endorsements and there's relationships that are very, very important. Obviously, all those things are enhanced by what you do on the court. So I'm proud of Mo in that he's kept, you know, his main focus, what he's doing basketball-wise. And while he's done that, he's also tried to demonstrate to people who he is as a person, what's inside of him. What we try to encourage him just from our Texas basketball side is the more that you can be yourself and just allow yourself to come out, the more, you know, people are going to be impressed, because he is an extremely impressive person. He's the type of guy that you don't want to just coach for 1 year or even 4 years. I mean, you want to coach that guy for 15 years. So whoever gets him is going to get a phenomenal person, but also someone that, as a long-term player, I can't really think of anyone that I've been around or even seen that has more potential than him.
Shaka, do you feel like, I mean, adding to that, the guy, he's an intellectual player, I mean, but for a guy as young as he is,
Yeah.
it seems like he's wise beyond his years and his marketability. You think he could be one of those faces of franchise type players eventually?
Yeah, I do. It's going to be an adjustment for any of those guys. A friend of mine is a pro scout, and I always ask him to compare the adjustment from high school to college to the adjustment from college to the NBA, and he says it's not even close. It's much tougher going to the NBA just because the level at which those guys are. LaMarcus Aldridge actually stopped by a couple nights ago, and he was in Cooley, and we were talking, and while he was talking, I was just imagining Mo next to him. And so you just got a grown man. And not to mention that he's 280 pounds or whatever LaMarcus weighs, how strong he is. And Mo's on his way to becoming a grown man, but not there yet. So it's going to be an adjustment. But certainly I think he's a guy that could become a face of a franchise. And when you talk about marketability, he has an unbelievable personality. You guys got a sense for it to some extent during the year he was here, but he has even more to him, and he's extremely bright. I mean, the guy got a 30 on his ACT. So I challenge you to find another first-round pick that got a 30 on his ACT. He intellectually and in terms of his emotional intelligence is in a class by himself.
Shaka, are you surprised that some are challenging his motor, his will at times?
Well, they did the same thing with Jarrett last year, and I think a lot of people missed on Jarrett. And I think there's probably some teams after 1 year that are saying, wow, we should have taken Jarrett Allen. And I bet you there'll be a whole lot more teams after 5 years that say that. Sometimes, you know, and I've learned this over the past couple of years, these NBA teams, they scrutinize these guys to the nth degree. And they pull them apart and look under every crack. And you know, I've gotten a question a lot about Mo. We got this question about Jarrett sometimes. Does he love the game? And you know, my response has always been that if the answer is yes or no, the answer is definitely yes. But I think for all of us, if you were to encapsulate our relationship with the game in 1 or 2 or 3 words, that's just not really sufficient to explain exactly how we feel about it and what the game means to us. But you're talking about young, big kids who are learning to work and learning to be professionals now and everything that goes into it. But I think the intellectual part in both of those cases really gives them a huge advantage.
Shaka, along those lines, can you speak to the job Coach Horn did to help Mo develop his game and in that same sense, kind of what you're excited about in terms of what he can do with Jericho and Jackson Hayes and the guys you have in your program?
Yeah, Darren's done a phenomenal job since we got here. You know, with the big guys, he's from day one been our coach that we've had working with the bigs. You know, he might have done a better job with Cam Ridley than he did with any player. Unfortunately, Cam got hurt midway through the season, but the transformation that he made during those 3, 4, 5 months was truly impressive. But he did a great job with Mo. With Mo and Jarrett, in both cases, you had guys who were very fast learners, but guys who, when you have a guy who's going to be there for 1 year, you're in a race against time, and you just don't have the opportunity to, do this slow, gradual climb. So we really had to push those guys. Darren did a great job trying to simplify for them what was most important. I thought with Mo, his offensive game, got better and better. He came in here relatively raw, and he's really grown in a lot of ways as an offensive player. You see some of the videos of him shooting NBA threes in his workouts. It's been impressive, and I think his upside there as a player long term is really terrific. But Darren's got a new group of bigs to work with now, and we're excited. Dylan's the one that's on the older side, and then a lot of freshmen and sophomores, but some talented guys, some guys with big upside. So we're just trying to, again, help them understand the 3 or 4 things that are most important for them to improve on. We're spending a ton of time on free throws this summer. Hopefully that's something that pays off because, as you guys know, in the Big 12, we're playing a lot of close games, and that's something that, for all positions, but particularly our bigs who we feel like are going to get fouled a lot, is going to be really important.
Along those lines, when the season gets closer, Kanate's coming back, Azubuike's coming back. Where do you think Jericho fits in the discussion of Big 12 big guys?
Yeah. Those 2 guys have certainly done more than him. But Jericho made a play in that West Virginia game at home early in the game that we were talking about it this morning. Jericho, Cody had, our operations guy, and myself. That dunk that he had early in that game, that made everyone in the building believe that.
The two-hand flush, yeah.
That made everyone in the building believe that, not just Jericho, but his teammates, his team, everyone could step forward in a game where we were a little shorthanded and win that game in a pressure-packed environment. So he has that ability to impact his team in that way. The thing that's exciting about Jericho is last year, in a lot of ways, he was our 3rd big behind Mo and Dylan, and sometimes we'd play all 3 of them, but that's probably not the most advantageous lineup for those guys individually. This year with Mo moving on, he'll have a chance at much more opportunity if he grabs hold of it. Last year there was a stretch of games where Mo either didn't play at all or didn't play very much because of his toe. And during those games, I believe Jericho averaged around 12 points and 9 rebounds. We would take that this year for sure. But that would be a big jump for him. And I remember asking him after one of those games, Brian, I think he had 15 rebounds in a game. I said, Jericho, why is it that you're playing so much more aggressively and playing so much better? And he said, well, the team needs me. I said, well, we kind of need you all the time, man. But he knows that. But he is a pretty matter-of-fact kid, and he kind of looked at it as, hey, Mo's on the sidelines right now. I need to step up for my teammates. It was the same in the TCU game at home, which was his first start, at least in conference play, and he really stepped forward in that one. So now it's clear to him. He's definitely one of our most important players, and there's a real need for him to step forward. I think compared to those guys that you mentioned, he has a little bit more development in front of him. He has more runway, I guess, in terms of just how much further he needs to go before he fully takes off. But I fully believe he's going to do it. It's just a matter of how fast.
Coach, you added Neil Berry to your staff.
Yep.
Tell me what he's been bringing to it, especially in some of your workout settings.
Neil's been great. He's really brought a level of energy and excitement. He's a great relationship guy. He has an understanding of our team, having been at Iowa State, so he's very familiar with our guys and the way we've played and some of the areas where we need to grow and get better. So he was able to get here and hit the ground running. He has a real special combination of confidence and humility that I think is so important in a coach, because I think the guys can see from day one he's not making it about himself. He's making it about Texas. He's making it about our guys. But he also knows what he's talking about, and he's confident in his coaching and his ability to communicate. So he's been great.
When you're dealing with a potential NBA superstar like Mo Bamba, how do you coach him as opposed to someone like, say, Jared Sims?
Well, I think you coach every player a little bit differently just based on their personalities, but at the same time you want to hold them to a certain standard that you believe that they can reach, and sometimes that they don't even know that they can reach. With Mo, he needed to, when he first got here, quickly make the adjustment to being the best player at the college level. So he was the best player on his high school team, but now he needed to quickly understand what it took to be the best player at this level. That's a little bit different than certain other guys. So I gave Mo a ton of feedback in addition to the normal coaching that we would do. He's very cerebral, so I would give him written feedback every week. We would meet quite a bit about it. We would watch little short edits. So there was a lot of attention paid there to him because he needed that. Jericho will get even more of that this year than probably he was ready for last year. So it's all dependent on a guy's capacity and then what buttons need to be pushed to make him better.
Obviously, coming into this year, you knew you were only going to have just a single season with Mo.
Yeah.
But what do you take away in your development as a coach from working with a big name talent like that?
Well, I learned a lot the year before working with Jarrett, having a guy for 1 year, and then with Mo coming in, I think that helped us in a lot of ways, just having been through the year before with Jarrett. It's challenging, particularly when it's a freshman big. We haven't had a one-and-done guard here, so I can't necessarily speak to that. But when it's a big, it's unique because bigs have a harder adjustment as it is to college because of the physicality of their position, because of the fact that the motor with which they're going to have to play is just so much higher than high school. I grew as a coach being around Mo. And this isn't so much because he was a one and done, just because of the way he is. He would challenge you. He would stretch you, and you'd have to tell him why certain things were the right way to do things. He wasn't just going to mindlessly accept everything. So that was good for me to make sure before I even addressed something with him or asked him to do something, I was thinking through in my own mind what the proper explanation in a concise way would be for him or for his teammates. There was a couple times in the year where, like a lot of freshmen do, even though he's a top 5 caliber pick, he got overwhelmed, and he got to the point where it's like you felt like it's okay if a guy's bending, but you don't want him to break. And so when that would happen, you really try to go back to the relationship part of it and make sure he understood that underneath all the coaching and the demands, there was a level of love there, and there was a commitment to each other. I think that was really, really helpful with Mo. He handled his injury really well. I think a lot of guys in that situation would have just kind of cashed it in and said, okay, I'm going to get ready for the draft. But I give him a lot of credit just the way that he fought to come back, even when a lot of people were telling him not to. The biggest thing I take out of coaching one-and-done guys, again, I mentioned this earlier, is just it's a race against time. You have a certain amount of time when they're with you, and you're fighting time in two ways. One, to make them as good of players and people as you can during the short time they're with you, and two, just how well you can implement what they do and integrate what they do into your team, knowing that a matter of months later they'll be off to bigger and better things.
Well, while we're talking about pros, have you heard from the two-time Finals MVP?
I texted him. And he's always great, staying in touch. I haven't bothered him too much. I just obviously congratulated him. But when you go through all the twists and turns that their team went through, and when you reach the pinnacle like he's done again, I would imagine you need some rest. You need some time away. So I haven't bothered him much. I'm sure he'll. He always makes his way here at some point over the summer or early fall, so we're looking forward to seeing him when he does.
sounds opportunistic, but the program needs to capitalize on someone like a former player has a big profile like that. How do you do that? How do you take advantage of KD in the spotlight? You see, Jared Allen is coming on. Miles, I think everybody would agree. Miles is coming on with the Pacers. Mo is in the spotlight right now. How do you capitalize on that?
Well, I think there's a few different ways, Brian. I think first and foremost, in recruiting, the majority of guys that are high-level players are looking for a place that can help them develop and reach the next level. So you really try to shine a spotlight on the fact that guys have come here over the last many years, going back 10, 15, 20 years, and had success at Texas and been able to parlay that into a great start to their NBA career and continued growth in their NBA career. So I think that's the first thing, is just, it sounds basic, but just kids having an understanding you can do it here. He did it here, and he did it here, and he did it here. At the same time, understanding that each guy's story and background is unique. So, Kevin Durant had a certain background and was looked upon as in a certain way as a high school player, came to Texas, and for a guy to necessarily think that he's going to replicate exactly what KD did, might be a little bit misguided. But to your point, can you utilize that to help guys with big aspirations see that they can go do something in a similar way? Absolutely. Obviously the recruiting rules are such that you can't necessarily take guys like that and have them calling and recruiting kids for you. But at the same time, there are things that, the guys that have played here take a lot of pride in the program. They've been great about the way that they've supported the program, and kids notice that, and kids are aware of that. So you utilize that as well. Anytime guys, come back, we typically have a decent number of alums come back in the fall. That always provides great visibility to their connection to our current players. When we did the ceremony with Kevin in early January last year, the best thing about that to me was just watching him with our players. And I look back at pictures sometimes from that day, just a genuine tie between two people that have something in common, which is both playing at Texas. One just happens to be one of the, two best players in the world, and another one happens to be a young guy who's just still trying to figure out how to be successful at the college level. But that's a special bond that kids definitely connect with and they want to be a part of.
Is this the year that y'all start wearing the KD logo on the shirt?
Oh, that's a complicated one. I don't think that's necessarily going to happen right away. We love anytime we can wear stuff with that logo, but I know, and these are obviously decisions that are more done on the administrative level. With the relationship with Nike, I know that the Nike people really want to make sure that the swoosh is prominent, and
they would prefer that.
Well, and we have a lot of stuff with the KD logo, and we love it.
Players wear a lot of KD stuff, I know.
They do, yeah.
But that was a talking point at one point, is that they like the Jumpman logo in Michigan.
Right. It's definitely something we've talked about a lot. I'll say this: anytime that we can, have that logo shown prominently on anything we do, whether it's shoes, whether it's just stuff that our guys walk around in, that's something we love. Our guys love it. As a program, we love it because he's a terrific ambassador of our program.
Coach, are you putting any pressure on yourself, not outside pressure, but any pressure on yourself to get this program to the level that you kind of probably envision it to be, and of course eventually get over that hump as far as winning a tournament game?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the pressure, to be honest, that you put on yourself or you put on what you're trying to do as a coach is more so on growth and improvement, and then what you're talking about is a byproduct of that. If you're, to be honest, if you look at a season like last year, if we're 2 points better, 4 points better, 6 points better on the offensive end, on the defensive end, in a lot of those games, and you allude to the NCAA tournament, that game in particular. So our focus, I think, would be misguided if it was only on the results. It needs to be on what are the things that go into us being better the next time we get in that game situation. And I think for us as a team, focusing this summer a lot of our attention on what we call the low-hanging fruit, particularly on the offensive end, that we can improve on, that to me is the better way to approach pressure. Because when you apply pressure on something that you can go do, you just have to have a disciplined approach, and you have to be committed as a group to the same thing. That to me is a good thing, and that creates the results. But no question, we think we can take a real step this year. Obviously, in a lot of cases, when teams do take a step, part of that is having a level of good fortune, and certain things going your way. But in terms of things that we can control, absolutely, that's where our emphasis is.
Are there any updates that you can give us on Andrew Jones?
Yeah, Andrew, I'm sure you saw the update a couple weeks ago. He is taking a web-based course now, which is phenomenal. The biggest two things with Andrew, I would say that I think I speak for everyone in our program when I say this, is that we're so excited about, one, the unbelievable progress that he's made since early January, and then two, just seeing him with a smiling face and being happy. Those two things are just things we're really, really excited about. So he's still getting his treatment in Houston at MD Anderson, and he's had an unbelievable attitude about that and been very disciplined with his approach. But when he does have times where he has gaps in that treatment, where he can leave Houston, he's been able to come here. He's been able to be around his teammates. He's been able to get in the gym, work on his game, get in the weight room some. You guys know Andrew. He loves working. He loves putting in time on his game. He loves putting in time on his body, and he's done a great job of that. He's gained some weight. He looks good. So we're excited about his progress.
Anything else, guys? Got time for 4 more minutes?
Any updates on Courtney? I just want to know how he is so far, and what's early returns on him.
He looks really good in drill settings right now. We've done a few things live play-wise, and it's a little fast for him, which is typical for a freshman. But he's really shot the ball well in our skill workout, probably better than any of our guards. And his work ethic's been terrific. Yesterday, we had our guards work out at 6:45, and the guys in the gym at 6 a.m. So his approach and work ethic's been terrific. But like every other freshman, just that transition, Brian, from being really good 1-on-0 and being really good 1-on-1, being good 2-on-2, 3-on-3, to that up and down live play, making decisions at full speed, not doubting yourself, trusting what you can do. That's something that he's going to have to go through. But the exciting thing is he has some older guards to lean on and depend on and learn from, and he's been very open to that. I think as a whole, our freshman class, they've done a great job so far, and it's early in the summer, but their receptivity has been terrific, and that's going to go a long way towards them learning.
Everybody expected Mo to be a star from the get-go. And all
Yep.
that. But all 5 of these new guys, is it fair to say none of these guys are Mobamba. They need to be sort of treated.
Yes.
Treated like freshmen. And all that.
Well, I'm actually excited about the fact that this is our first year, Brian, in a few years where our best player isn't a freshman big.
Right.
And I think that.
That's true.
And by the way, I mean, I'd love to have a Jared. I'd love to have a Mo, you know, any year. But when you have some guys that have a little bit more experience and understanding of what it's going to take, especially earlier in the season, and then later in the season when you kind of hit that wall of, okay, the high school season would be done, but we've got another month, that's something I'm excited about. You know, big difference from last year not having a freshman point guard. We have that in Courtney, but then we also have some older guards that, you know, we can play that position by committee, and those guys can help each other. But to your point, yeah, there's no Mo's or Jarrett's in this class. I told those guys early on, I said, you know, you guys need to make sure, and we need to make sure that we're managing expectations. I'm talking about internally. I'm not really talking about with you guys for our freshmen, because their thought process should be, I'm going to come in and get better and grow and try to help our team be the best it can be, but not necessarily the same mindset that a Mo would have.
Right. Shaka, with Kamaka and with Gerald Adele, both from size and skill set standpoints, do you like the potential that you've got with those two guys, just in terms of versatility that they can give you?
Yeah, I like those guys a lot. Gerald has actually been a real pleasant surprise so far. Not that, you know, I knew he was a good player, but he's got a little bit more stuff to him than I thought. The key for him is going to be when it gets hard, when it gets challenging, how does he respond? He's got to focus on the next most important thing instead of being frustrated or hard on himself. I'm talking about in the moment. He can be hard on himself when the workout gets done or the game gets done and think through it. But both those guys have a level of skill and hopefully an ability to make shots, because that's huge for us. You know, we talk about offense sometimes in these settings, and I've been asked the question a lot, where do we need to improve and what do we need to do to improve? Two of our biggest points of emphasis offensively is what are the components of offense we can do to be a better three-point shooting team and to be a better free throw shooting team. And we're spending a lot of time on that this summer, and those two guys will help.
Brock Cunningham, when we got to watch him here locally, he usually played with a lot of confidence. Swagger maybe kind of in some guy's face and every once in a while.
Yeah.
When he transitions to this level, what is in front of him, and how has he kind of handled that?
I've encouraged Brock to be himself and understand that, you know, the things that he does really well that attracted us to him are the things that we want him to bring to the court at this level. So he really doesn't need to change in that way. He just needs to learn what goes into success as a freshman, all the habits that you need to develop at this level. He's very, very hard on himself, so trying to get him to understand you're okay. That's the big thing with a lot of times as freshmen, is their confidence can waver at times. But the reality is it's mid-June, and you know, we've got a lot of time left on the court to get better and to learn and improve before we even take the floor for our first official practice. So I'm excited about having him here because he does have some of those intangible qualities that we really need.